am just going to quickly do an overview of our agenda for the day. So, Andrew, if you could go to the next slide. All right, so what we're going to do today, we're going to start with a really brief overview of the Wallace Center's work over the past several years to support and advance this field of farm to food assistance. We're going to share what do we mean by that, by farm to food assistance, and more specifically, what we mean by values-based, equity-centered farm to food assistance. We'll then spend the bulk of our time hearing from farm to food assistance leaders in Colorado and Kentucky. So we have M. Sedolkowski from Metro Caring in Denver, Colorado, and Taylor Ryan from Change Today, Change Tomorrow in Louisville, Kentucky. Both are going to give presentations on their brilliant work in their communities, and then we'll have a panel discussion with them to dig deeper into how they are using farm to food assistance as a lever for food systems transformation in their communities. We'll then share the recommendations that came through our research and a call to action to everyone that's listening today. Um, Before we get into it, I know we've got a lot of folks in the call today. Just want to remind people to please stay on mute. There's a lot of us here, and we're just on a regular Zoom call instead of like a webinar format. So please just be mindful about that. But please do use the chat, and I see y'all are already doing that, so I appreciate that. It's really great to hear from folks. We want to hear your reflections and your questions. So please, use that chat liberally. And we'd also love to know, who's here. So use it, introduce yourselves, and share what's exciting you about this burgeoning field of farm to food assistance. All right, slide. So just a little background, for some folks that might be in the call, you might be not as familiar with the Wallace Center supportive farm to food assistance over the years. So just want to give a high level overview. The Wallace Center is a national nonprofit that's been working to strengthen local and regional food systems for over 40 years. In 2018, we launched the Food Systems Leadership Network to resource and support the amazing humans across the nation, all of you who are working tirelessly to advance this same mission. Within the Food Systems Leadership Network, there are people working across the supply chain from farm to fork, working to both support the success of local producers and also improve community food access and build food sovereignty in our communities. And so in 2019, we launched the Game Changers Lab, which was really our first kind of, experimental space for learning about farm to food assistance. That program ended right at the end of the pandemic in March 2020. Some of you might have been with us at our conference here in New Orleans when the pandemic was literally rolling out. And we very swiftly shifted into supporting folks to participate in the USDA's supply chain, kind of pandemic related supply chain response programs, including the Farmers to Families Food Box Program and the Local Food Purchase Assistance Program. So, doing a lot of TA and advocacy and support around those two programs. In 2022, we were just seeing a huge growth in these efforts to engage farmers more meaningfully in feeding their own communities. Um, and we wanted to launch a space for people to be able to learn together, to connect with one another. And that's when we launched the National Farm to Food Assistance Community of Practice. We also conducted a national survey, which was the first of its kind in partnership with Duke World Food Policy Center. And we also launched the Farm to Food Assistance Learning Lab. So we've had a lot of stuff going on over the last, 5 or so years around farm to food assistance and have just learned so much from focus groups and interviews, et cetera. And we've channeled all of this learning into a total of, it's been 22 national publications over the last several years. And the most comprehensive of which is the report that we just published last month. So today we're here to lift up the learning that's reflected in that report and the leadership of the folks that are doing this work on the ground in their communities. And if you want to go to the next slide, I'm just going to very briefly touch on, what was the kind of guiding inquiry of our research, the guiding questions for this work. We wanted to really better understand the models, challenges, changes, and enabling factors for values-based, equity-centered farm to food assistance. So that is what the kind of the framework for the Farm to Food Assistance Learning Lab, for the conversations that we hosted within the National Farm to Food Assistance Community of Practice, the focus groups that we hosted. We really wanted to better understand and uncover the diversity of approaches in this field, really better understand the challenges that folks are facing in advancing this work, and in particular, what oppressive systems are at play that are getting in the way of using farm to food assistance as a tool for food systems transformation. And so we hope that the report that we just produced is helps to answer these questions, and at least kind of lays the groundwork for additional work and exploration and resourcing of this field. So slide. A quick high-level overview of the report. It includes what we learned in those areas around the different models, challenges, enabling factors, et cetera. And it also includes links to the 10 profiles of the Farm to Food Assistance Learning Lab teams. Those profiles are really fantastic and really give you a good sense of the creativity and innovation that's happening in community around farm to food assistance. So I want to really like point people to those profiles and make sure that you check them out. And both Change Today, Change Tomorrow, and Metro Caring's profiles are both really awesome. We're not going to get into all of the kind of content from the report today because we really wanted to give a lot of time to Taylor and M to share more about their work in community. So please go and check out the full report if you haven't already. And then finally, this next slide, I just, it probably looks like a bunch of gobbledygook, just lines, but that's just an indication of how many people contributed to this report. There were over 50 folks that like really generously provided their intelligence, their brilliance, their experience to produce this knowledge, this body of knowledge, and it would not have been possible without all these folks stepping up to offer their information and knowledge together. So just really want to thank everyone. If that's you here, thank you for being a part of this effort. And I hope you see yourselves reflected in this report. All right, with that, I'm going to pass it over to Andrew to give an overview of farm to food assistance.
All right, thanks, Susan, for the intro. And we wanted to share a working definition of farm to food assistance that was developed with the Learning Lab and with others along the research process. And I'll just read the first part of this, that farm to food assistance value chains connect regional farms with food assistance programs like food banks, food pantries, grassroots programs that provide food to people experiencing hunger and food insecurity. And the ultimate goal is that food reaches those who need it most while paying farmers fair prices for their products. And so that, the first in the Learning Lab, at least with those 10 teams, the first step was defining, well, what is this? How would you define this? And then we could characterize it and ask all the research questions about it that Susan was outlining. And, after we had this, the next thing we did was digging into what are the values that would underlie an equity-centered, community-driven farm to food assistance program? And something we found around that, around the country, farm to food assistance initiatives are grounding their efforts in core values that extend beyond economic efficiency. Instead of focusing narrowly on securing the most food for the cheapest price, the values present a holistic set of principles to guide decision making and the allocation of money and other resources. The values-based approach is integral to the potential presented by farm to food assistance for food systems transformation and to shift from charity to justice in our efforts to address hunger and inequity. And that was from the report, but a really good summary of how the values inform these. And in our discussion with the Learning Lab, we had a graphic recording artist with us to capture the conversation. And just wanted to highlight a few things here, starting with the big welcome in the middle. And that's the culture that people want to set with these programs and who's at the table, welcoming children and families and food hubs, all different types of farmers, people that are impacted by food insecurity. And by having them at the table in the design of the program and sharing their values, you can interweave dignity throughout. So if you look at the left, those are all that checklist of things that would be present when those folks are at the table and helping to design. including equity in process and outcomes, continuous evaluation, making sure it's serving all of those people, language justice, which we'll hear about some today from Metro Caring. And then as that is interwoven, if you go look on the right side, those are the impacts of these programs. If these values are, for living out those values and their impact in the community, food justice and accessibility for consumers as well as farmers to access the food that they're growing, that others are growing, analysis of root causes, and that agriculture is on a human scale. So farmers are able to scale as they wish and not forced or told to be a certain size in order to meet the market, being able to scale for the lifestyle that they wish. So this graphic was from the Learning Lab, and then in the case studies and focus groups and interviews, those were really reinforced, and these 5 stood out. So there wasn't one set of values, but these are ones that were common for values-based, equity-centered farm-to-food assistance programs. They bring sectors of the food system into alignment around the goals, which is the key to the transformative power. So these were present really throughout, and that came up regardless if it was a community-based program or someone that was operating an LFPA. These were really key as far as building generative relationships across the value chain that were beyond just transactional relationships, centering equity. And as Susan mentioned in the background, really since the murder of George Floyd in 2020, everyone has become more aware, and a lot of people in food systems are trying to operationalize that, and farm to food assistance is a way to put funding behind that, design something new with that centered. Having dignity in food production and food access, so not just getting food to people, but the growing process offers a livelihood, as well as the food that's provided is with dignity. And as I said before, having a seat at the table, so valuing community experience and lived experience in the design and in how things are run. And finally, caring for the earth through sustainable and regenerative agriculture. I wanted to highlight one quote. This is from one of the Learning Lab members, Sophia Pastor with Northwest Tribal Emergency Management Council. But she said, food assistance on its own is a dead end. We cannot food assist our way out of hunger. It's important that farmers participate and that they're valued and that they get a good result. But at the same time, farm to food assistance can only be a stepping stone towards the real solution. And so while these are great programs, they're innovative, they're not the end solution, as she's saying, because food assistance is a dead end road. And with that, I want to hand it over to M, who is in the Farm to Food Assistance Learning Lab, to share your perspective. So I'll take this down.
All right. Can everyone see my screen?
Yeah, see it.
Yeah, cool. Hi, everyone. I'm Em Sidolkowski. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm the manager of strategic initiatives at Metro Caring. Metro Caring, we are a frontline anti-hunger organization located in Denver, Colorado. We work with our community to meet people's immediate needs for nutritious and culturally relevant food while building a movement that ends hunger at its roots by addressing root causes. And so we have a lot of program areas. Farm to food assistance is an aspect of our food access work under the umbrella of food sovereignty. We also engage in nutrition education, cooking classes, diabetes self-management programs. Andrew referenced, we lead cohorts in language justice, in which folks in our community obtain certifications to become interpreters and translators, who then work directly with us in translating our material from English into our 5 main languages, who are present at our events and in our market and our community spaces, ensuring that everyone who comes to Metro Caring and engages in their work is able to do so in the language of their heart. We also do urban agriculture programs and community wealth building work and community connections for resource sharing. So when we say root causes, what do we mean and what are we talking about? So our community organizing team uses consensus-based action planning in order to identify root causes with our community every year. And so these are our 5 identified root causes: unaffordable housing, inadequate access to healthcare, a corporate food system, inadequate public benefits, and a racial wealth gap that are the main factors that we're trying to address when we talk about what does it mean, what is it going to take to address hunger at its root. And so our community organizing team does this work in partnership with leaders in our community through going to our capital and having testimonials, having conversations with media, having conversations within their own communities, and taking action-based efforts in order to address these. So one win that we actually had this past year that was really exciting with a coalition of organizations that address housing is Just Cause Eviction in Colorado, just for one example. But today we're here really to focus in and talk about what is farm to food assistance and what does it look like for us in practice here in Denver. This is a picture on my screen of our fresh foods market. So Metro Caring is a food pantry, really the heart of what we do and how we engage mainly and get to learn and meet our community members is really first through here. And so it operates as a no-cost grocery store with a take what you need model. And so folks are able to come in and shop. It's organized like a grocery store, although very much on a smaller scale, in which we have a freezer, we have a cooler, we have different sections for dry goods, we have a meat counter, and folks are able to take what they need for their families. We have no restrictions. We don't ask any questions or like qualifiers for folks to come in and shop with us. Although, as many organizations know and have shared over the last few years, especially with the pandemic and just the increasing costs of food, our numbers continue to grow of folks that are coming to us for food assistance. And we operate on an appointment base in which folks are able to come once a month, and our appointments are scheduling almost 6 weeks out. So to a point that Sophia shared, who was a collaborator in the Farm to Food Assistance Learning Lab, food assistance alone and this like model of farm to food assistance is a really important stepping stone, but we will never meet the need and we'll never be able to end hunger through it alone. And that's evidence just in our own experience here. The sources for how we stock our market. So as a farm to food assistance organization, we do purchase quite a bit of food in fiscal year 2024, which our fiscal year is a bit funky. It runs from April to end of March rather than on a calendar year or a government fiscal year, anything that could remotely probably be helpful for our accounting team. We spent over $300,000 procuring food. We also receive food through TFAP, so the Emergency Food Assistance Program, which we receive from Food Bank of the Rockies, which is our local Feeding America partner. We also receive donated food from individuals, from congregations, from groups of folks that get together and want to do a food drive. And we also participate in grocery rescue programs with Whole Foods, Trader Joe's, King Soopers, KeHE, and UNFI. A quick snapshot of our farm to food assistance. So this is a map that was put together in partnership with Colorado Boulder campus, Masters in the Environment students in their capstone project last year, where they created a GIS map for us of farmers that we are currently working with and procuring food from. It's available on our website, along with a local food procurement catalog in which we detail the farmers that we work with and farmers that we've gotten to know and are building relationships with. So of that $300,000 that I shared that we spent in our 2024 fiscal year, over 96% of that budget was purchased food from local women-owned or BIPOC farms in Colorado. This was like 15 farms and ranches with 8 producer agreements for the 2024 season. So thinking about what it means to have that confirmed income and that ability to predict and to know that you're going to be able to sell certain products. That's really what those producer agreements are about. And it was also in partnership with farmers that were willing to grow specific crops and items that we learned from our community were most important for us to have in stock in our fresh foods market. We also work closely with a few food hubs to procure food for our market as well. And my coworker, Corey, who's our food access manager, couldn't be here today. So And she really holds a lot of the relationships and the knowledge and the network with our producers. So I have a video introducing one of our ranchers instead, since she couldn't join us.
I brought almost 500 pounds of beef from Metro Caring today, and I'm so excited. My name is Rachel Woods, and I manage Woods Family Ranch. We brought a lot of ground beef, rump roast and chuck roast, some short ribs, brisket. We brought some interesting cuts like oxtail and beef liver, beef hearts, and we also brought 2 beef heads. Ranching is all about planning. It's hard when you're farming to know how much to get and how much you'll be able to sell. It was really great to have this purchasing agreement. I had confidence that the meat had a great place to go. Having that confidence that Metro Caring was going to buy this beef allowed me to buy it upfront and know that these cows were going to be going to a good place. We do holistic grazing. It's really good for the land, good for the ecosystem, good for the environment, and the cows love it because they're getting green grass throughout the whole entire summer. So they're very happy cows. I was so glad and grateful to link up with Metro Caring to sell this beef and my pork, because I knew that I was raising animals in a way that I felt really good about. I wanted to make sure that not just my neighbors were getting this sustainable, healthy meat, but also like people here in downtown Denver with all kinds of people who might need it.
Yeah, so that was Rachel, just one of our ranchers that we have a purchasing agreement with, in which we are purchasing beef and pork, like she shared. We also work with another rancher in which we are able to purchase whole cows, which has been really cool. And those are made years in advance agreement, so that over the lifetime of that cow, we're able to support that rancher from the very beginning, before that cow is even going to be at our meat counter at Metro Caring. And then I just wanted to leave off for the moment by sharing a couple of quick stats to give like some numbers behind what we're doing here in Denver. And so in the last month, we put out over 300,000 pounds of food through our fresh foods market directly to our community. That looks like over 3,800 households with over 12,000 family members or persons living in those households. And was over 4,000 visits to our market. And in this current fiscal year, so that's going to go through till end of March of 2025. So far, we have spent over 200K on purchased food. And so I'm looking forward to diving into some more context and nuances of our program with you all in the panel. But for now, I'm going to hand it over to Taylor, who will talk about their work in Kentucky.
Okay, I wasn't gonna share my screen, but that was beautiful, so I'm gonna try. But if it don't work, then I'm gonna flop back. Sorry, Allison and Andrew. Y'all be okay. Give me some patience.
All right. Well, thank you, and a lot of love for the video that you shared while Taylor is pulling up her slides. But that was, it's we were just talking about centering farmers, and then it's great to have that voice come in. All right, Taylor, looks like it's coming.
Can you see my screen?
Yeah, you got it.
All right. Well, thank you so much to the Wallace Center. This has been probably, honestly, my favorite fellowship that I've done so far. I see head nods, so yes, in agreement. I'm Taylor Ryan with Change Today, Change Tomorrow. My pronouns are she, her, and I am in Louisville, Kentucky. Okay, there we go, pressing it. I'm gonna slide through. So a few things about myself. I am the bomb. I am a single mother. I just turned 34 and I have bipolar. So fun facts about me. At Change Today, Change Tomorrow, we focus on community engagement, food justice, and public health. You'll hear a little bit more about a few of the things, but this picture in particular is some of our youth advisory council, some of our volunteers, and some of our community partners. at what we know is the only farmers market in Louisville's West End. So the city of Louisville has about 700,000 people in it. There are about 70,000 Black folks in the West End, which is a very clear divide in our city. We are top 5 most segregated city in the nation. And we live on the other side of the tracks, per se. But with that, that means we have a lack of education, a lack of healthcare, a lack of access to basic necessities such as food. And so we are operating the only farmers market in the West End, even though there are over 20 or 30 farmers markets in the entire city. So before I get into a little bit about our work, we do have some shared language that I like to share just to keep everybody on the same page. We don't believe in empowerment. We use the word activation. Empowerment sounds like we're infiltrating a space and giving people something that they don't already have. And we truly believe that the people have the power, and sometimes it just needs to be activated. Sometimes we're heavily dependent upon, our large scale of information dissemination. So sometimes information is up here and really hard to digest. And we work really hard at breaking it down and making it understandable and navigatable. And that piece of intentional care that oftentimes, gets ignored. We also utilize the term foodscape, which is something that we've just been playing around with the last few years. It's your landscape, but it's just your access to fresh food in your neighborhood. Your foodscape is kind of what leads us to this slide here, which is highlighting, as you can see, our map of the city. We have all of these Kroger, and this is not just, this is just Kroger. So this is not your Whole Foods, your Publix. We're also getting a BJ's. We have a Meijer, we have a Sam's, we have a Walmart. We also have local grocery stores like Rainbow Blossom and Paul's Fruit Mart. And for some reason, none of them will cross the 9th Street divide. And so we have this one Kroger here. I don't know if you all can see my cursor, but we have this one Kroger that 60,000 people split. And it's highly policed. It's underfunded. They threaten to close all the time. They talk about the stolen property as if all grocery stores do not receive, all grocery stores are stolen from. And so I always like to highlight this stat here. It says crime rises in your neighborhood when food security in that neighborhood falls by 1%. This is a real stat. It is Googleable. You can look it up. It is a Clemson stat. And that just means that people need what they need to survive and to thrive. So if you're only going to put one grocery store in a neighborhood of 60,000 people, you should definitely expect people to be stealing from there because you only have one, versus over 17 Kroger on the other side of town, which also people steal from them. This other side also just highlights the plethora of Family Dollars we have to choose from on our side of town, because for some reason we keep getting dollar stores and Family Dollars in place of grocery stores. And our Family Dollars and dollar stores also have a liquor license. So at the same time that you're going to buy your high bread and dairy from the Family Dollar, you're also going to leave with your alcohol because it's a one-stop shop. You're not going to get quality at the Family Dollar, and you're going to be overpriced. So this is where we step in. We are really small, but very mighty. We believe in community-based interventions. And so what that looks like is an array of programming that is very consistent, because that's what aids us in creating that trust with the base that we serve. If you do an event and only 2 people come, please host that same event again with those same 2 people and just continue, because those same 2 people will become what this picture is now, and a consistent group of people who come and show up monthly, weekly, and really pour into this work. And so with us having the only farmers market in the West End, we were very intentional about how we built it. The picture you see here is us sitting on our own land. So we purchased a lot last year. It is on the corner of 25th and Date Street, catty-corner to our farmers market location. So while you're at the farmers market, you can also take our survey to see how you can get more involved in this land that we're co-creating with the neighbors. But with that, this is like 2 events in one. In this picture, we have our working groups, and we also have the Food and Neighborhood Summit. They were doing a tour. They stopped by and built us a compost bin. And so we're very collaborative, very community oriented. There's not something that we're going to do at Change Today, Change Tomorrow without asking the community first. And so that's where our farmers market actually was birthed from. We bought that lot, and in process of buying the lot, people were filling out the survey saying they wanted a farmers market. Now, of course, our work in food was, of course, directly aligned with it, but was it a part of our 2024 goals? No, it wasn't, until the neighborhood said that's what they wanted, and we said absolutely. And so after hearing from the neighborhood, we then reached out to farmers to get an idea of like, what's the best practice and best day for us to have this farmers market, because Saturday at 12 is sold up, honey. You can't expect all 5 Black farmers from your city to be in 17 different places at once, and they don't have, adequate staff, or maybe not enough harvested in the first place. And so being very intentional about how we built our farmers market, we were approved by the Community Farm Alliance for double dollars, and that goes with your SNAP machine, but our SNAP machine application was never approved. And so we had to hard pivot and rely on our local food purchase assistance boxes, which are our LFPA. And our LFPA is carefully curated, intentionally built alongside Locals Food Hub. They just actually opened a new food hub in Louisville. They had a site in Frankfurt, so super excited to have more fresh food options that work directly with farmers. They actually provide triple dollars if you shop there in store, so just quick shout out to them. But we were able to curate our LFPA boxes in a way that was non-competitive with our Black farmers. And so if we have our farmers market, you're physically in space. We have Black farmers in space. Shout out to Black Roots Farm. But they were in there, and we were building our LFPA boxes around what they did not have. And so also always want to be intentional about making sure we're not stepping on anybody's toes. Definitely don't want to invite somebody to a space where we're giving out 100 free of what you're trying to sell. So again, try to be very intentional about the care that we're providing with that experience. And so we also work with Community Farm Alliance for their Fresh RX program, which is a food as medicine farm-built box for pregnant and expecting mothers. That is something that we're going to fold into our farmers market next year. We're super excited about our farmers market next year. Like, this year was just like the taste, just to see like, okay, can we do this? Do we have capacity? But we've been able to receive an abundance of help from our Youth Advisory Council. They host our food demonstrations with our mutual aid program coordinator. And so not only do you get this LFPA box, but we're going to cook what's in the box so you can taste it, so you know if you like it, because we don't want you to go home with a box that you're going to waste, because a lot of our practices are also in gleaning and being sustainable. And so we are doing food demos. We're also giving people recipes, because maybe you've seen this item before, but you don't know how to cook it. And so we're showing you how to cook it. We're giving you a recipe. We're posting it directly onto the box so that you know this is what's inside this box, and this is a recipe to go along with this box. Again, information dissemination is important. People may pick up a box just because they know it's free, but get home and don't like eggplant. So what we're going to do with this eggplant? We got to find somebody who likes eggplant. And what better way to do that than be at the farmer's market, at the food demo, experiencing eggplant all together. And our Youth Advisory Council, 2 of our Youth Advisory Council members were also our farmer's market co-leads. And so it's this big, robust, growing family of community support, but the responsibility is shared. And so it builds that trust, but it also builds that ownership. I have a title here. I run shit here. I'm so sorry, Allison. Y'all know I'm a cuss. Just one. Okay, just one. But it really bolstered what we're doing at Change Today, Change Tomorrow, and put us in a place where this year we were able to convene people and pay people as experts in their lived experience, which is, an overlapping value of Change Today, Change Tomorrow, but also for the Farm to Food Assistance Learning Lab. Like, so many of our values are speaking like boldly and proudly through the work that we're doing with the Wallace Center, alongside folks in the space, alongside people who are in this call that I see y'all. Thank y'all for being here. And we've been able to convene people. One, we had a summit this year, the State of Black Food Summit, where we provided breakfast, lunch, sent everybody home with a family style dinner. We provided childcare and transportation. And then everybody who attended also left with $100 to let them know, like, thank you so much for your brain work. And can you join this working group so we can continue this work? And so from our summit that happened in April, we have 4 different working groups that meet monthly. They all come together to do 4 different projects that all we've done is facilitate the fundraising for. They have their own budget, they're creating their own projects. And then at our next summit next year, everybody's going to display their work and, of course, recruit 4 more working group members. And so all of our work this year has been able to like fold into itself, be more sustainable, but also be so much community oriented and community fed and led. And outside of that, we do a community feedback meeting. It happens monthly. And so we pay people to attend our meeting. We're probably talking about some type of grant that we have coming up. This grant says we are going to do this. Do y'all like that? Do y'all think that makes sense? Does this align with what we're already doing? If this doesn't make sense for you all, we're probably not going to even apply for this grant. Also, is an opportunity for us to get real and raw data that we were able to publish this year. Let me see here with the Kentucky Food Action Network, KFAN. And so what we do at Change Today, Change Tomorrow is we have a free grocery program outside of our farmers market, which allows us to ask people 1 question per week instead of bombarding folks with 52 questions. And so by the end of the year, we have a comprehensive report. We have pulled data that is not extractive or shameful. You're signing in, it's 1 question, you bebop, you come through, you get your groceries, you leave. And at the end of the year, we have a full report. Thank you so much. In exchange, you get these free groceries and all these other opportunities. We may be sharing other flyers of other things going on and coming about. So this year we were able to we rerouted 125,000 pounds from Trader Joe's as well as our local farmers with our LFPA program. With that, we were also able to rerouting to other local farmers to feed their livestock, to other local organizations who maybe take the food and cook it and feed their folks. We rerouted a lot of our poundage to our own compost bin. And of course, we're looking to scale our compost next year. So next year at our summit, everybody who attends is going to leave with a compost bin so that we can scale family and community composting. And so, we can create some sustainability in our community. I don't know if I'm at time, and you just let me know if I can keep going.
No, I'm going to cut you off there, Taylor. You are the bomb and you have so much good stuff to share. And I have some questions for you guys. So thank you so much, both of you, for just giving us such a great sense of the amazing work that your organizations are doing. And I think what really comes across in both of your presentations is that farm to food assistance is much more than just buying food from local farmers and giving it away. It's so much more than that. And so, I think something that I've learned from both of you, and I think Taylor, you use this terminology as part of the lab, is like that you're flipping the script on what this work is supposed to be, what it's really supposed to look like, and how you're approaching the work. So I just want to ask her if you could tell us a little bit more about that. Like, talk about the power building work that you're doing. Both of your presentations talked about that, community and activation. Thank you for giving us a better term, Taylor. And also, Em, you spoke about the language justice work that y'all are doing, the advocacy work that y'all are doing, and building community power. So just tell us a little bit more about that aspect of your farm to food assistance work. And whoever wants to jump in, maybe Em, you want to go first, and then let's hear from Taylor.
Sure, yeah. So I think focusing in specifically in farm to food assistance, what this has really looked like is learning directly from our community, like what are the priorities when we're talking about having a no-cost grocery store model. What is really important? What can you count on, and what do you want to count on being in that fresh foods market? Because we know folks in our community that are experiencing food insecurity, and from my own personal experience, you're not going to one place. It's very rare. Like you have a schedule, you have this knowledge of what's available when and where. Like you just are building from this experience in these years over time of experiencing this food insecurity. Down to I always share this one story from one of our board members now. where she told me that she knew when the spray turned on the produce section at Target because she was worried about that affecting the weight of the produce on the scale and what that would mean because she was budgeting so down to that nitty-gritty amount. And so like what Taylor was saying about like getting in, asking those questions, and then building that knowledge and report then to inform our procurement plan. So we do a survey throughout the growing season, and we also have a community advisory council that builds that survey itself, so that we're not asking a bunch of questions that maybe don't make sense or aren't going to tell us the true underlying values that folks have around their food. So not just exactly what the food items are, but
Uh-oh, we just lost your audio, Em. Do you guys hear her? No. Uh-oh. She might have just frozen up on us. All right. Well, while Em gets back into the matrix,
I can hop in.
Taylor. Yeah. You want to hop in? We
And we
lost you for a
cannot hear you, so
second.
we are pivoting. Yeah, community activation. Information dissemination. It's my thing. Getting resources and information to people and knowing this, like seeing the basic reaction of people knowing that you care about getting them that information. I know people have a misconception of the Black community and thinking that we don't want free food, we don't want fresh food, we don't want to learn new things, we don't want to vote, we don't want to have our hands in activation and power making and decision making, but that's not true. Anytime I've ever had a conversation with anybody at our organization on any level, they're curious. They want to know how they can get more involved. They don't like big words. It's intimidating. And I can agree. I'm in spaces often where people are like, bottom up organizing and grassroots this. And it's like, sometimes we just need to get this work. We don't have to do all the terminology and coins and things. Like, we have to just work. But I would say an example of how we've activated community in the past was we had, there was a church in our city who wanted to build a stadium. And for some reason, churches need to build stadiums. I don't know. We did a quick survey with our base. The church was a block away from our office. And we did a survey with our base that said, hey, do you all go to this church? And a lot of them said no, 90%. And they're in the neighborhood. So it's just weird because how are you in the neighborhood and don't go to this church? But the church is packed every Sunday, here nor there. And so the next week we sent out a question that said, if you do go to this church, what do they do for you? What are some things that you're involved in at this church? Of that, 90% of people who didn't go, the 10% said, about 3% said, we do things there. Okay. Well, the next week we came out and said, hey, did y'all know this church is about to get $5 million to build a stadium? Do you even see space to build stadium? Do you know what that means? We're going to start knocking houses down. And I kid you not, those folks, all we said was, do you know this is happening? Call your Metro Council member. And we just know that that church never got that $5 million. So that's one example, is just giving people the information and then these are the steps. You take them, you don't take them, but this is the information. Do you think this church needs $5 million to build a stadium on top of your house? Probably not. Another example is taking our work a little bit farther. And so this year, we're trying to dismantle our charity model. We understand we do a free grocery program Monday through Thursday. People are in line. It's a line. How can we dismantle the line? How can we make this more mutual aid? How can we dismantle this idea of shame and guilt and oppression and not be mutual aid? And be mutual aid. How can we flip that? And so we've been engaging folks this year, trying to figure out, what does that look like? Where do you all want to be? How can you be incorporated? And so I'm happy to say at the beginning of next year, we'll be launching a journal. It is a weekly prompted journal. We did it alongside the That Journal. It's a local Black journal creator in the city. And so she's also national. So if you want to make a custom journal, she is a Black woman, Mahogany Mayfield, the That Journals. She will make you a custom journal. And so for 52 weeks, once a week, we're going to be engaging our line, talking about different themes. Each quarter is based on an emotion that is highly prevalent in the Black community. So we're going to be navigating anger, grief, depression, and joy. And so having these conversations, the idea is to, one, have the conversation at the line, what makes it a communal conversation, but then also take that journal back home and have a family conversation. A lot of these prompts are conversations, particular in the Black community, that we're not having. We're not having the conversations, and for some reason we're okay with not having them. And so how can we plant the seed at the line, send this journal home, and ensure that people are really, you know, participating and building themselves up? Because after that, then we're going to figure out, what's your skills? What's your leadership type? How can we get you on the school board? How can we get you a Metro Council? What does it look like if you was to join the PTA? What do you need?
I mean, Taylor, I'm always amazed by the amount of things that y'all have going on. It's really extraordinary. And Metro Caring is the same. Like y'all, you were just listing off like kind of so quickly, like, you know, this council and that work, et cetera. I mean, it's really extraordinary what all y'all are pulling off. I want to ask you to just respond to this question quickly so that we can then get to the recommendations for the report. But what do what advice would you give to others that are really trying to advance this more equity-centered, values-based farm to food assistance work that you're doing? What advice would you give? And, are there any like major challenges that you think we have to overcome as a field? So maybe, in one or two sentences, if you can just give it a little soundbite, and then we'll move into the recommendations. You want to go? I think we got your audio back.
Yeah, are you all able to hear me?
Yeah.
Yep, that nonprofit internet. Um, so I think that really just echoing a lot of like what Taylor is sharing, where our work is coming from, is like, first step, listen to your community, to your staff who are on the ground and doing this work. If you're a funder, if you're in a place of leadership or power, listen to the folks that are doing work every day. Listen to farmers and build those relationships. And then as an organization that's engaged in farm to food assistance work, find those other organizations that are values aligned and build that culture of the values aligned procurement, and think about, what does it look like to have strategic procurement plans and working with farmers in your area to purchase what they're growing at that institutional level. Like, how can we create that competition for this dominant corporate market in our values aligned way? And so build the movement, talk to people, and listen.
Thank you, Em. And Taylor?
I started Change Today, Change Tomorrow in the back of my homegirl's house with a 1-year-old baby. So if I could do it, you could do it. Anybody can do it. Keep doing it. I think that's the most important part, is don't give up. Don't give up on yourself, and don't give up on people. And also to navigate, I would say, like, to navigate the barriers, turn your discernment up, turn it up real loud, and utilize your discernment. Sit and meditate. Think on, is this person bullshitting me, or is this really their values? You can see what's really going on, and being connected to people via their values versus some dollars is going to take you farther.
Such good counsel for all of us, no matter what we're working on. So thank you, Taylor. And Andrew, I think you've got a couple of minutes if you want to just hit up a couple of the recommendations from the report, and then we can send people off with a call to action.
Sure. Yeah, there we go. I'll just highlight these. A lot of it it's what Taylor and Em are doing, what they were talking about. So I don't need to go back over all of them in detail, but one of the first is around narrative change from charity to food rights. And as you understand that in your operations, is just sharing that with the people that you talk with in your work, with funders, with community members, and helping people to understand that shift. Another one is just long-term sustainable funding that would help farmers to plan to, as this was really a boon for a lot of farmers, but if it's not certain, they're not going to be able to crop plan for the next year. So having as much certainty as you can project for them, as well as for the recipients and participants in this, to know that they'll have a steady stream of available food. Around equity and public funding. There's some interesting data around TFAP in the report, and that the 1 year of TFAP funding is more than double all of the funding for LFPA, and the economic impact of LFPA is greater than the TFAP amount. So it's investing in farm to food assistance is a great it's a use of funds, beyond increasing food access, supporting farmers. It's a smart economic decision. Establishing fair prices for farmers and producers. We've talked about that a lot, and there's some benchmarks in there for helping farmers with crop planning and budgeting and figuring out what their costs are so that they're getting a fair price and able to support themselves and come back year after year to support community. Building power, I think Em and Taylor talked about how they do that in their communities. And so one of the interesting statistics for me was that there's 2 million volunteers per month in food banks around the world in Feeding America. And so imagine if all those volunteers were talking about this, we're thinking about a different way of doing food charity. That's a lot of power that could be built. And then finally, closest to my heart, measuring process with impacts over inputs and outputs is not looking at pounds of food or people fed, but what's the health impact for people? What's the economic impact for communities? Are farmers thriving? And reducing the number of people that are relying on charitable food. And that's my quick run through of the recommendations, and I'll hand it back to Susan.
Yeah, well, we hopefully you hear this, through this message of the work that Metro Caring and Change Today to Change Tomorrow are doing, as well as so many other organizations across the country that are really trying to flip the script around the charitable food system and use food assistance as a lever for food systems transformation, and not just food systems transformation, but community transformation. The level of intentionality and thoughtfulness that these organizations, these individuals, leaders on the ground are bringing to this work is extraordinary. And I hope you got just a little taste of that today in this conversation, and you'll be able to learn more of that by exploring the full report, which we can drop again a link to in the chat. And I just want to leave y'all with a call to action. The last couple of years has been, as Andrew had said, kind of a boon for this work. We'd had multiple programs, especially the local food purchase assistance program, that has fueled farm to food assistance across the nation. And we need that program to become a permanent program in the Farm Bill. This work needs to continue, and it has to be resourced. And so just really want to encourage everyone that's on the call to lift up stories of impact of the farm to food assistance work, of local food purchase assistance program with your elected officials and in your communities. Not enough people know about these programs. I know that I was like nerding out bringing the report to my Thanksgiving meal with my family and sharing with them the incredible work that's happening across the nation. And they had no idea. Folks don't know that this work is happening. And so it's up to us to lift up the stories and, back to that recommendation to really shift the narrative around farm to food assistance, around the charitable food system, about the potential for farmers to feed their own communities. It's especially important to lift up stories of farmers who have been able to grow their businesses, particularly as we're moving into a new administration. That kind of economic multiplier story is going to land really well with this new administration. So we really need to lift up those stories. And then also just make sure that your state or tribal government is securing the additional funding under LFPA 25. That was recently announced. It is, significantly more funding for the program over the next couple of years. It's got more restrictions than we've had in the past couple of years, but it's better than nothing. So make sure that your states and tribal governments are tapping into those resources. And then finally, for the funders that are on the call, we need you to meaningfully invest in this work. As Taylor and Em had described, it is relationships and trust and community that makes this all possible. And that requires time, and that requires people. And so, it is really imperative that the foundations that support this ecosystem really meaningfully invest in this work, and enable these organizations to do that day in, day out work of building relationship that's at the heart of farm to food assistance. Thanks for coming today, everyone. Thanks, Em and Taylor, for sharing your work. Thank you, Allison and Rachel, who's not with us today, for all of the brilliance and heart that you poured into producing this report with us. Thank you, Andrew, for all of your work in hosting the Learning Lab and these calls, and everyone else that's contributed to this collective learning. I'm just really grateful for each and every one of you, and I wish you all a really happy holiday season. If anyone wants to hang out for a couple minutes and just connect, please do so. And otherwise, we'll stop the recording and send you all into your afternoon. Enjoy the rest.